Absolutely nobody cared about the Valentina Shevchenko-Alexa Grasso title fight that happened this past Saturday night, and here's why. Now, don't let the sold-out T-Mobile Arena fool you. It was Mexican Independence Day weekend, something that the UFC has rarely done, which is hold a card on Mexican Independence Day weekend. And us Mexicans know how to turn out for one of our champions, especially with Alexa Grasso being the last woman standing as far as Mexican champions go. Yair Rodriguez lost his belt to Volkanovski. Brandon Moreno got robbed by the judges against Pantoja. Alexa Grasso is literally our last hope when it comes to a world champion successfully defending their title or winning a true world championship. Not only that, but this was a huge fight. With Valentina Shevchenko being the only women's flyweight champion in UFC history, it made what Alexa Grasso did to her back at UFC 285 in March of this year all the more special, and it made the rematch even bigger for the state of the division. With all these champions getting immediate rematches now, it made the future of the division more and more important, and Alexa Grasso just had to win. And with this fight being a draw, that could have been the worst thing to happen to the division. More on that later. Now, I'm not here to take away the greatness of Valentina Shevchenko. I'm not even here to shit on her title reign. She's one of the greatest women's fighters to ever grace the octagon and is one of the greatest fighters ever, period. I'm just merely questioning her star power. Let me give you an example. Valentina Shevchenko throughout her UFC career has headlined a card 5 times. The first 2 coming against Holly Holm and Juliana Pena. Simple Fox cards that not that many people watched. But hey, it's free TV, and who's going to turn down free TV? The 3rd time she has ever headlined a card was in her rematch against Amanda Nunes at UFC 215, one of her best fights and one of the greatest fights in women's MMA history. People are still, to this day, arguing about that fight, debating on who won, whether it was Valentina or Amanda. But when that fight happened, you can easily say that Amanda was the star, the A side in that equation. Why? Because she just came off defeating Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey, the 2 trailblazers of women's MMA and 2 of the most popular women's MMA fighters to this day. The 4th time she's headlined was back in 2019 when she fought Liz Carmouche in their rematch, and it was a pretty lackluster fight. Now I'm going to say something that is really stupid, but it makes sense, and I'm hoping it'll make sense to you. If it does, let me know in the comment section. Valentina's dominance throughout her title reign was rather boring, especially to the casual eye. There's a difference between boring dominance and entertaining dominance, and what Valentina had was boring dominance. It was so boring in the sense that guys like Chael Sonnen were pleading for Valentina to go full heel just to get people interested in her fighting. So that fight was truly lackluster against Liz Carmouche, to the point where this Reddit user was saying, "I stopped watching after the 2nd round." And that's saying a lot with the quasi-star power that Valentina had at that time. And of course, the last time she headlined a card was this past Saturday against Alexa Grasso in their rematch. Now, my point being is that in those 5 fights, those 2 title fights that Valentina headlined a card by, she was the challenger. She was the B-side. She wasn't even the dominant champion like an Amanda Nunes or like a Demetrious Johnson. Even Demetrious Johnson headlined some pay-per-views when people were saying that Demetrious was always missing that star power, that charismatic personality that'll give him over the top when it comes to pay-per-view buys. Now, I know some of you in the comment section are going to be like, well, Amanda Nunes had title defenses where she was the co-main event. Yes, absolutely, that's a fact. But here's the difference with Amanda Nunes. Her past 2 title fights were probably the most important title fights of her career. They were big pay-per-view headliners in which we didn't know the trajectory of Amanda Nunes' career. Whereas Valentina, out of 7 of her title defenses, 6 of them, she was the co-main event. That is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Basically what you're saying is that Valentina is not that big enough of a star that she's going to be the appetizer to the fight that we're all waiting for, and that being the main event. When it comes to star power, Valentina is not on the level of a Ronda Rousey, an Amanda Nunes, a Miesha Tate for that matter. To the casual fan, she's not that appealing. Now let's get to her fight this past Saturday. I wouldn't call it the greatest women's fight in UFC history. That title belongs to Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili. Unless another women's fight is able to take the mantle, that will always be the greatest women's fight in history. I will call it a good fight though. It was very tactical. It was very entertaining in the sense that these women were really trying to set traps for each other that each woman was ready for. Alexa had the bigger moments in the fight, dropping Valentina Shevchenko. I feel like Valentina did well in the grappling department, but also not enough to where she won the fight. She did take Grasso down, but she didn't do enough on the ground. She had one guillotine sunk in, but Alexa was able to survive. I feel like Alexa definitely outstruck her on the feet, but that jab for Valentina was definitely money. If you were to ask me what my score of the fight was, I would say rounds 2, 4, and 5 went to Grasso. The 5th round was definitely not a 10-8 in favor of Grasso because Valentina was landing some very good shots on the feet until Grasso was able to get her on the ground via Valentina's slip up of grappling.
Well, I'm happy with my performance. I think I did, for me, it was 3-2. The 2nd, 4th, and 5th were for me, but I'm not the judge, so yeah, I'm not the judge.
Unless you're this dumb son of a bitch named Mike Bell who thought Alexa Grasso won round 5 10-8, but I digress. Everyone who watches MMA knows that the judging criteria is absolute dog shit, and I don't think it can be fixed whatsoever. Let me hear your scorecards in the comment section. If there's ever a fight that needs to be a draw, it doesn't get a draw. Someone ends up getting screwed in the end. And where there's a fight that doesn't need a draw, it's a draw, and in the end that just log jams the entire division. And in the end, we're going to see Valentina Shevchenko fighting for a title in the next 6 to 9 months because this division has to be resolved, and I don't want that to happen. In the end, this division needs parity. It needs fresh faces. It needs something new to the point where Alexa should be defending her title against the likes of Erin Blanchfield or against someone other than Valentina Shevchenko because Valentina doesn't appeal to the masses like an Alexa Grasso does because Alexa has an entire country behind her. Like I could find 1, maybe 2 clips of Valentina Shevchenko's fights that'll make her go on SportsCenter's top 10. Other than that, she is a decision machine. And it really pains me to say that about one of the greatest women's fighters of all time, but it's just the goddamn truth. As far as fight week itself and the fights, I feel like the UFC did a great job really hitting home and touching the Mexican and Latinx culture through Mexican Independence Day, especially with this UFC belt that I absolutely love. I hope they plan to replicate this belt even more, especially with no Yair Rodriguez or Brandon Moreno on the card. I feel Brandon should have been on the card, but I just hope the UFC really touches Latinx culture more often in the future with cards like this.